From 100 mysterious video game history facts to fall asleep to. Hello and welcome. Find a comfortable position. Let the world outside fade away. Tonight, we are not concerned with the fast-paced, the loud, or the immediate. Instead, we are embarking on a long, quiet journey. A journey into the spaces between the code, into the whispers on old internet forums, and into the shared memories of digital worlds that have long since vanished. Video games are often seen as finite things: a disc, a cartridge, a file, a set of rules and a defined world. But they are also living things, shaped not just by their creators, but by the millions of people who inhabit them. And in the quiet corners of these worlds, stories are born. Some are tales of ghosts in the machine, digital phantoms born from glitches and imagination. Others are stories of real-world consequences, of controversies that shook an industry, and legends that were proven true. And some are mysteries that may never be solved, questions left lingering in the code for decades. There is no rush here. We have 5 hours. Let the stories wash over you. Let your mind drift through forgotten arcades, across vast digital landscapes, and into the heart of gaming's greatest mysteries. This is a journey for the quiet hours of the night. A collection of facts, fables, and folklore to fall asleep to. Part 1. The Ghosts in the Machine. Creepypastas and Digital Folklore. Our journey begins with the stories we tell each other in the dark, the digital equivalent of campfire tales. These are the creepypastas and urban legends, narratives born from the collective imagination of the internet, where the line between a game's code and a player's fear becomes beautifully, terrifyingly blurred. They represent a modern form of folklore, evolving from simple text-based stories into complex, interactive experiences that challenge our perception of reality itself. Chapter 1. The Arcade Cabinet That Never Was. Polybius. Our first story takes us back to the golden age of arcades, to the dimly lit, neon-soaked halls of 1981 Portland, Oregon. According to legend, a new cabinet appeared one day in a few suburban arcades. It was a simple, stark black machine, bearing only a single strange name: Polybius. The game itself was described as abstract and geometric, a fast-paced shooter with disorienting visuals. But its most notable feature was its effect on those who played it. It was dangerously addictive. Children would form long lines, fighting for a chance to play, despite the disturbing side effects. Players reportedly suffered from amnesia, seizures, night terrors, and vivid hallucinations. The legend speaks of players returning to the machine again and again, driven by an unnatural compulsion, until they went insane, vanished, or even took their own lives. Adding to the mystery were the Men in Black. These strange figures were said to visit the arcades, but not to collect the coins. Instead, they collected unknown data directly from the Polybius machines, fueling speculation that the game was not a commercial product, but a government experiment, a psychological test designed to gauge reactions to its psychoactive stimuli, with some accounts linking it to the CIA's real-world mind control program, MK Ultra. Then, just a few weeks after its arrival, every Polybius cabinet disappeared without a trace. It's a chilling story. But it's just that, a story. There is no evidence that Polybius ever existed. No newspapers or gaming magazines from the era mention it. No ROM image of the software has ever been found, and no authentic cabinet has ever been located. The name of the supposed publisher, Sinneslöschen, a German word roughly translating to sense deletion, offers a clue to its fabricated nature. The legend is now widely considered to be a hoax that originated with a post on the coin-op collecting website, coinop.org, in the year 2000, created to drive traffic and build a myth. However, like many powerful legends, the story of Polybius is rooted in a kernel of truth, a blend of real but unrelated events from that exact time and place. In 1981, at a Portland arcade, two teenagers did fall ill on the same day. One, Michael Lopez, suffered a migraine after playing Tempest. Another collapsed from stomach pain after playing Asteroids for 28 hours straight. Just 10 days later, the FBI raided several local arcades, monitoring cabinets and recording high scores as part of an investigation into illegal gambling and tampering with machines. These separate events, sick players, government agents in arcades, and a general cultural anxiety about the new, hypnotic power of video games were the perfect ingredients for a modern urban legend. Though the original cabinet is a myth, Polybius has since been defictionalized. Developers have created real games inspired by the legend, including a version for the PlayStation VR. The Black Cabinet has become a piece of gaming folklore, appearing as a knowing wink in popular culture, from an episode of The Simpsons to the Disney Plus series Loki. The game that never was has, in a way, become real. Chapter 2: The Sound of Silence, Lavender Town Syndrome. From a game that allegedly affected the mind, we turn to a piece of music that allegedly claimed lives. In the mid-1990s, the world was gripped by Pokémon fever. But according to one of gaming's most infamous creepypastas, the release of Pokémon Red and Green in Japan in 1996 was accompanied by a tragic and mysterious wave of illnesses and suicides among children aged 7 to 12. The cause, the story claimed, was the music from a specific location in the game, Lavender Town. Lavender Town is a unique place in the otherwise cheerful world of Pokémon. It is a graveyard, a somber tower filled with the tombstones of deceased Pokémon. And its theme music is notoriously unsettling. The legend of Lavender Town Syndrome proposed that the original version of this theme contained high-frequency tones and binaural beats that were inaudible to adults, but physically affected children. These frequencies supposedly caused headaches, nausea, erratic behavior, and in over 100 documented cases, led them to take their own lives. Like Polybius, this story is a fiction, a creepypasta that went viral on websites like 4chan in the early 2010s. But its power and believability were amplified by a real and widely reported medical incident connected to the Pokémon franchise. In December 1997, an episode of the Pokémon anime, titled Denno Senshi Porygon, Cyber Soldier Porygon, aired in Japan. The scene in the episode featured a rapid sequence of flashing red and blue lights that triggered photosensitive seizures in hundreds of viewers across the country, an event that became known as the Pokemon Shock. 8. This real-world incident, where a piece of Pokemon media caused genuine physical harm to children, provided a crucial grounding for the Lavender Town myth, making the fictional story seem plausible. 8. The legend was further embellished with layers of fabricated evidence. Creators of the creepypasta would Photoshop images into spectrogram outputs of the Lavender Town music, claiming to find hidden sprites of ghosts or the unknown Pokemon, spelling out messages like "Leave now." 8. The story's effectiveness, however, stems from the music itself. The composition is genuinely eerie. It uses a series of sharp, atonal notes and relies heavily on the tritone, an interval once known as Diabolus in Musica, the devil in music, for its unsettling sound. The high-pitched, clashing chiptune melody creates a palpable sense of dread, which made it easy for an entire generation of players to believe it could have a sinister effect. 8. The core myth of Lavender Town Syndrome also gave rise to a host of spin-off stories, expanding the haunted lore of the original games. These included tales of a scrapped final boss for the Pokémon Tower called Buried Alive, a half-buried zombie who would drag the player underground upon defeat, a decaying white hand sprite that would cause illness, and a conspiracy theory known as Pokémon 731, which linked the music to a failed government experiment to brainwash children. 8. Pause. Chapter 3. The Ghost in the Code. Herobrine. In the early days of Minecraft, when the world was still largely procedurally generated wilderness, shrouded in a thick, pixelated fog, a new kind of monster was born. It wasn't a zombie or a creeper, but something far more unsettling, a ghost in the code. Its name was Herobrine. The story began in 2010, during Minecraft's alpha stage of development. With an anonymous post on the image board 4chan, the author described starting a new single-player world and, in the distance, spotting what they first thought was a cow. As they got closer, they realized it was another player character, using the default Steve skin. But its eyes were solid white, blank and glowing. The figure stared for a moment before vanishing into the fog. After the encounter, the player began finding strange, unnatural structures in their world. Perfect 2x2 tunnels, small pyramids of sand in the ocean, and groves of trees with all their leaves stripped away. When the player tried to post about the experience on the official Minecraft forums, their thread was repeatedly deleted. They soon received a private message from a user named Herobrine, which contained only a single word: stop. Further investigation, the story claimed, revealed that Herobrine was the username of the brother of Minecraft's creator, Marcus Persson, also known as Notch. When asked if he had a brother, Notch supposedly replied, "I did, but he is no longer with us." The original 4chan post, accompanied by a single, eerie screenshot of the white-eyed figure in the fog, received very little attention and nearly faded into obscurity. The myth was catapulted into legend by a live streamer named Copeland on his channel, Brocraft. Having seen the original post, Copeland staged his own Herobrine encounter. He photoshopped Herobrine into a few screenshots, and then, during a live broadcast, modified an in-game painting texture to look like the ghostly figure. He walked into his in-game house, discovered Herobrine standing in a room, screamed, and abruptly ended the stream. The hoax was a massive success. The legend of Herobrine exploded across the Minecraft community, spawning countless fan-made videos of alleged sightings, mods that added the character to the game, and a persistent belief that a ghost haunted the single-player worlds. Despite repeated denials from Notch, who has stated he never had a brother, and from the development studio Mojang, the myth became an indelible part of Minecraft culture. Mojang eventually embraced the legend as an official in-joke. For many years, the patch notes for major updates would almost always include the line, "Removed Herobrine," a playful nod to the community's most beloved ghost. In a testament to the community's dedication, in 2020, a group of players managed to find the exact world seed and coordinates of the terrain featured in the original 2010 screenshot, a location now famously known as Herobrine Hill. Chapter 4. The Drowned God, Ben Drowned. Some stories remain just stories. Others grow, evolve, and pull their audience into the narrative until the line between fiction and reality begins to dissolve. Such is the case of Ben Drowned, a creepypasta that transformed into one of the most complex and influential alternate reality games, or ARGs, in internet history. The story began in September 2010 with a series of posts by a college student who went by the username Jadisable. He recounted buying a used copy of The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask from an old man at a yard sale. The cartridge was blank, with Majora written on it in permanent marker. When he started the game, he found an old save file simply titled Ben. He deleted it and started his own game, but soon noticed unsettling glitches. Characters would refer to him as Ben, music would play in reverse, and textures would go missing. The true horror began when Jadisable performed the Fourth Day glitch, a known exploit in the game. This seemed to break something deep within the haunted cartridge. He was transported to a twisted version of Clocktown, empty of all inhabitants, but filled with the eerie Elegy of Emptiness statue, which seemed to follow him wherever he went. The game became a personalized, psychological torture chamber, filled with ominous messages like, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" and "You shouldn't have done that." Jadusable chronicled his descent into madness through a series of forum posts and deeply unsettling YouTube videos of the gameplay, which showed the game actively fighting back against him. The initial story arc concluded with Jadusible's apparent disappearance and the implication that the malevolent entity, Ben, had escaped the cartridge and was now on the internet. This is where the story transformed. What started as a creepypasta became an ARG. Clues left on Jadisible's YouTube channel led the community to a website for a mysterious cult called the Moon Children. This cult, which worshipped the moon, practiced a ritual of ascension to join their deity, a ritual that involved drowning. 25. It was revealed that Ben was a young boy who had been sacrificed by this cult, his spirit trapped within the game cartridge. 25. The community was no longer a passive audience. They were now active participants in the narrative. The ARG's story unfolded across multiple websites, forums, and hidden videos, with puzzles and ciphers that the community had to solve together. In a brilliant stroke of interactive design, players discovered they could influence the events of the ARG by uploading videos of themselves playing specific songs on the ocarina from the Zelda games. The narrative itself began to loop, mirroring the 3-day cycle of Majora's Mask, with the community's actions determining the outcome of each loop. The story of Ben Drowned became a sprawling, collaborative narrative that ran for years, demonstrating a profound evolution in digital folklore, from a simple, scary story to a living, breathing world built between a creator and his audience. Chapter 5. The Games That Erase Themselves. Killswitch and Pale Luna. Some of the most compelling digital legends are not about what a game contains, but about what it takes away. They speak of games that are, by their very design, ephemeral, playable only once before vanishing forever, leaving nothing behind but a memory and a story. The most famous of these is Killswitch. The legend tells of a 2D horror adventure game released in 1989 by a mysterious Soviet-era Czechoslovakian company called Carvina Corporation. Only 5,000 copies were ever produced. The game's most terrifying feature was not its content, but its code. Upon the player's death or the game's completion, Killswitch would completely erase itself from the computer, leaving no trace of its existence. It could not be copied or reinstalled. Players could choose one of two characters: Porto, a young girl who could change size, or Gast, an invisible but powerful demon. Because the game self-destructed, a player could only ever experience one path. Most chose Porto, as navigating the game's world as an invisible character was nearly impossible. The story of Gast's journey remained almost entirely unknown. The legend grew in the early 2000s, culminating in the tale of a Japanese man named Yamamoto Ryuichi, who in 2005 supposedly purchased the last known sealed copy of Killswitch at an auction for $733,029. He intended to record and upload a full playthrough of Gast's story. However, the only thing that ever surfaced was a single short video of Yamamoto at his computer, weeping, with the character's select screen visible. It is a masterful piece of storytelling, but it is entirely fictional. The story of Killswitch was written by author Catherine M. Valente, first appearing on the website Invisible Games, before being published in her short story collection, The Melancholy of Mecha Girl. Carvina Corporation never existed, and the game was never real. A similar, though darker, legend is that of Pale Luna. This creepypasta tells of an obscure text adventure game from the 1980s that was notoriously broken and almost unplayable. The game would crash constantly, and its puzzles were nonsensical. Most players gave up, but one obsessive player, Michael Nevins, spent years trying to solve it. After countless hours, he finally managed to complete the game. Upon completion, the game displayed only one final message: a set of coordinates. Driven by curiosity, Nevins followed the coordinates into a forest. After a long search, he began to dig at the location specified by the game. There, he unearthed the decomposing head of a young girl with blonde hair who had been reported missing years earlier, Karen Paulson. The game was not a game at all. It was a cryptic map left by a killer, a confession hidden in code. Like Kill Switch, Pale Luna is a work of fiction, a chilling story that blurs the line between a digital puzzle and a real-world horror. Chapter 6: The Cursed Cartridges, Pokémon Black and NES Godzilla. The idea of a haunted or cursed game cartridge is one of the most enduring tropes in video game folklore. It taps into the tangible nature of older games, the feeling that a physical object could hold more than just data. One of the earliest and most influential of these stories is Pokémon Black. This creepypasta, which predates the official Nintendo DS game of the same name, tells of a bootleg Pokémon Red cartridge, solid black and unlabeled. The game plays like a normal copy of Pokémon Red, with one terrifying exception. In addition to their starter, the player is given a new Pokémon, a level 1 ghost, with the sprite of the ghosts from Lavender Tower. This ghost has only one move, Curse. When used on an enemy Pokémon, the screen goes black. A distorted, low-pitched version of the Pokémon's cry is heard. And when the screen returns, the enemy is simply gone. The implication is clear. The Pokémon has been killed, not fainted. More disturbingly, after defeating a trainer, the player is given the option to use Curse on the trainer themselves. If they do, the trainer's sprite vanishes from the game world, and returning to the spot reveals a tombstone in their place. The game progresses, with the player leaving a trail of death across the Kanto region. After defeating the Elite Four, the game cuts to black. Text appears. Many years later. The player is now an old man, walking slowly through a desolate world, devoid of any other people, with only the tombstones of the trainers they cursed remaining. The haunting Lavender Town theme plays on a loop. The player eventually returns to their home in Pallet Town, and upon stepping on the starting tile, the game shows a montage of every Pokémon and every trainer they cursed. The final battle begins. The player, as the old man, faces Ghost. With no Pokémon and no way to escape, the only option is to fight, which results in the player using struggle on themselves. When the player's health is critical, Ghost finally uses Curse. The screen goes black one last time, and the save file is erased forever. A far more elaborate take on this theme is the NES Godzilla creepypasta. This is not just a short story, but a sprawling, multi-chapter epic, complete with hundreds of custom-made screenshots to illustrate its narrative. It tells the story of a player who acquires a haunted cartridge of Godzilla, Monster of Monsters, for the NES. The game is progressively corrupted by a malevolent, demonic entity known only as Red. Red manifests as a terrifying, skeletal creature who torments the player by twisting the game into a surreal nightmare. Familiar levels are replaced with hellish landscapes, and the monster roster is filled with bizarre, grotesque creatures not from the original game. The story takes on a deeply personal tone as the player discovers that Red has a connection to his late girlfriend, Melissa, who died in a car crash. The game becomes a battle for her soul, with Red taunting the player with visions of her torment. The narrative culminates in a final epic battle against Red's final form, where the player, with the help of a hidden angelic monster that is revealed to be Melissa's spirit, must fight to save her from an eternity of suffering. These stories, from the simple, chilling tale of Pokémon Black to the epic saga of NES Godzilla, represent the pinnacle of the haunted cartridge genre. They tap into the power of nostalgia, taking the familiar and beloved games of childhood and twisting them into something deeply personal and profoundly disturbing. Part 2. When the game gets real. Controversies, curses, and consequences. Sometimes the stories that surround video games are not born of fiction, but of fact. These are the moments when the digital world spills over into our own, creating real-world consequences that can be just as strange and compelling as any creepypasta. From legal battles that reshaped an industry to superstitions that captivate millions, these are the legends rooted in reality. The tangible impact of these events demonstrates a powerful feedback loop. The digital world creates events or stories that prompt real-world reactions, legal, cultural, and even physical, which in turn shape the future of the digital world itself. Chapter 7. The Hot Coffee Scandal. In 2004, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was released to critical acclaim and massive commercial success. But hidden deep within its code was a secret that would soon ignite one of the biggest controversies in video game history. In June 2005, a Dutch modder named Patrick Wildenborg released a modification for the PC version of the game titled Hot Coffee. The mod unlocked a fully functional, interactive sex minigame that had been disabled but not removed by the developers at Rockstar Games. After a successful date, the protagonist CJ's girlfriend might invite him inside for some coffee. The camera would remain outside the house while suggestive sounds played. The Hot Coffee mod, however, took the player inside, initiating a minigame where players controlled CJ during animated sexual intercourse. The minigame featured an excitement meter that the player had to fill by pressing buttons in rhythm. The discovery of this hidden content created a media firestorm. Rockstar's initial response was to blame hackers, issuing a statement that claimed the mod was created by disassembling and then combining, recompiling, and altering the game's source code. 44. This was quickly proven to be false. The code for the minigame was present on the retail discs for all platforms, including the PlayStation 2 and Xbox versions, and the mod simply made it accessible. 43. The backlash was swift and severe. Activists and politicians, including then-Senator Hillary Clinton, condemned the game and called for greater government regulation of the video game industry. The Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, launched an investigation and in July 2005 changed the game's rating from mature 17+ M to the commercially devastating adults only 18+ AO. An AO rating is seen as a commercial death sentence, as major retailers like Walmart and Target have policies against stocking AO-rated games. Rockstar was forced to halt production of San Andreas and release a new, clean version, with the content completely removed to restore the M rating. The scandal had massive financial and industry-wide repercussions. The parent company, Take-Two Interactive, reportedly spent over $20 million on legal fees and the costs of the recall and re-release. In the aftermath, the ESRB implemented a new policy threatening fines of up to $1 million for publishers who failed to disclose all pertinent content in their games. The hot coffee incident remains a landmark case study in video game controversy, a moment when a few lines of hidden code triggered a national debate and permanently altered the landscape of game ratings and regulation. The irony is that the explicit content was originally part of a much grander and even more graphic vision by Rockstar president Sam Houser, which included scenes of oral sex and the use of dildos as weapons. Content that was toned down during development, precisely to avoid the AO rating they received anyway. Chapter 8. The Madden Curse. Every year, one of the NFL's brightest stars is given the honor of appearing on the cover of EA Sports' flagship Madden NFL video game. But for over 2 decades, this honor has been seen by many fans as a harbinger of doom. The Madden Curse. The superstition holds that the player who graces the cover is destined to suffer a significant injury or a sharp decline in performance during the subsequent season. The legend is typically traced back to the cover of Madden NFL 99, which featured San Francisco 49ers running back Garrison Hearst. After a spectacular 1998 season, Hearst suffered a gruesome ankle injury in a playoff game that kept him out of football for 2 full seasons. The pattern seemed to continue year after year. Madden 2004 cover athlete Michael Vick broke his fibula in the preseason and missed most of the year. Sean Alexander went from league MVP to rushing for less than half his previous yardage after appearing on the Madden 2007 cover. The list of victims is long and compelling, fueling the belief in the curse among fans and players alike. Year, Madden Edition. Cover athlete. Previous season highlights. Cursed season outcome. Verdict. 1999. Garrison Hearst. 1,570 rushing yards. 7 TDs. Suffered a severe ankle injury in the playoffs. Missed next 2 seasons. Cursed. 2001. Eddie George. 1,509 rushing yards. 14 TDs. Rushing average dropped. Career high fumbles. Never rushed for 1,000 yards again after the following season. Cursed. 2002. Dante Culpepper. 3,937 passing yards. 33 TDs. missed 5 games due to injury. Through 14 TDs to 13 INTs, team went 5-11. Cursed, 2004. Michael Vick, electrifying dual-threat QB, suffered a fractured fibula in the preseason, missed the first 11 games. Cursed, 2007. Sean Alexander, NFL MVP, 1,880 rushing yards, 27 TDs. Rushing total plummeted to 896 yards, plagued by injuries. CASU, 11,000 rushing yards, 1,177 yards, 11 TDs. Missed 6 games with injury. Production dropped by over half. Cursed, 2013. Calvin Johnson, 1,681 receiving yards, 16 TDs. Set the NFL single-season record for receiving yards with 1,964. Not cursed. 2018. Super Bowl MVP. One NFL MVP led team to another Super Bowl. Not cursed. 2020 and 2022. Patrick Mahomes, MVP and Super Bowl champion, remained one of the league's top QBs, though suffered minor injuries. Not cursed. However, the Madden curse is a classic example of a statistical fallacy known as reversion to the mean. 55 is chosen for the Madden cover precisely because they have had an extraordinary career-best season, an outlier performance. Statistically, it is far more likely that their performance in the following season will regress or revert back toward their career average rather than repeat or exceed their peak performance. 55. Furthermore, the NFL is a physically brutal sport where injuries are extremely common. It is not statistically surprising that a player, especially a running back who endures significant physical punishment, would get injured. 56. There are also numerous examples of players who have broken the curse. Madden 13 cover star Calvin Johnson proceeded to have the best season of his career, setting the all-time NFL record for receiving yards. 54. Tom Brady won the league MVP award the year he was on the cover of Madden 18. 51. In recent years, with players like Patrick Mahomes gracing the cover multiple times without significant incident, the power of the curse appears to have waned, though it remains one of the most enduring superstitions in all of sports. 58. Chapter 9. The Atari Landfill, the ET Burial. It is perhaps the most potent symbol of the video game industry's first great collapse. The story goes that in 1983, facing financial ruin, the pioneering company Atari took millions of unsold cartridges of its biggest failure, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, drove them into the New Mexico desert and buried them in a mass grave, covering them with concrete. For over 30 years, this event was widely considered an urban legend, a cautionary tale about corporate hubris, and the game that single-handedly crashed the industry. The truth, as it turns out, is real, though more complex. The video game crash of 1983 was not caused by a single game, but by a market oversaturated with low-quality titles and a loss of consumer confidence. Atari, once a titan of the industry, was in dire financial straits. The company had grossly overproduced cartridges for 2 key titles. The first was the Atari 2600 port of Pac-Man, which was critically panned and left Atari with over 5 million unsold copies. The second was E.T., a game famously developed in just 5 weeks to meet the 1982 holiday season. It was a commercial and critical disaster, selling only 1.5 million of the 5 million cartridges produced. Facing a warehouse full of millions of useless cartridges, Atari made a business decision. In September 1983, news reports from Alamogordo, New Mexico, described 10 to 20 semi-trailer trucks from an Atari warehouse in El Paso, Texas, dumping their contents into the local landfill. The site was guarded, and shortly after, a layer of concrete was poured over the buried materials. For decades, the story remained a legend. But in 2014, it was proven true. As part of the documentary Atari Game Over, a film crew led by director Zach Penn received permission to excavate the landfill. On April 26, 2014, before a crowd of onlookers, they dug into the desert floor. They found them, thousands of crushed Atari game boxes and cartridges. While copies of E.T. were indeed among the unearthed treasures, so were cartridges for Centipede, Pac-Man, Defender, and many other titles, confirming that the burial was a mass disposal of various unsold inventory, not just a single failed game. Around 1,300 cartridges were recovered from the site. Some were given to museums, including the Smithsonian, while others were auctioned off, turning what was once corporate trash into prized historical artifacts. The excavation turned an urban legend into a verified, tangible piece of history, a physical monument to the end of gaming's first golden age. Chapter 10: Death by Berserk. In the cacophony of an early 1980s arcade, one game developed a reputation more sinister than any other. Berserk, a 1980 maze shooter by Stern Electronics, is the subject of a grim legend that the game itself was responsible for the deaths of at least 2 young players. The story begins in January 1981. A 19-year-old named Jeff Daly reportedly died of a massive heart attack at an arcade in Calumet City, Illinois, moments after posting a high score of 16,660 on Berserk 65. The story is often embellished with the ominous detail that if you remove the numbers 1 and 0 from his score, you are left with 666. Just over a year later, in April 1982, tragedy struck again. At the very same arcade, Friar Tuck's Game Room, an 18-year-old named Peter Burkowski collapsed and died of a heart attack after playing Berserk. He had just achieved 2 high scores in less than 15 minutes. A third death is sometimes linked to the same arcade, where a man was stabbed to death in an altercation outside, with some versions of the story claiming the fight began over a quarter for the Berserk machine. This is a case where diligent research has been able to separate fact from folklore. The death of Peter Burkowski is a confirmed tragedy. It was reported at the time by the Chicago Tribune, and the county coroner noted that Burkowski had pre-existing scar tissue on his heart. The coroner concluded that the stress and excitement of playing the intense video game likely triggered the fatal heart attack. but that it could have happened during any number of stressful situations. The death of Jeff Daly, however, appears to be a complete urban legend. There are no contemporary news reports of the incident. Researchers have found an obituary for a Jeffrey Allen Daly of the same age who died in 1981. But it was in a different state, months later, and the cause of death was a car accident. The story was likely fabricated and attached to the real tragedy of Peter Burkowski. Its details, like the 666 score, crafted to make it more sensational. The stabbing death was real, but unrelated to the game itself. The story of the cursed embarking cabinet is a powerful example of how a real, tragic event can become the nucleus for a growing urban legend, feeding into the cultural anxieties of the time about the new and poorly understood world of video games. Part 3. The Great Hunts, Community-Driven Mysteries. PM. Some of the most compelling stories in gaming are not written by developers, but by the players themselves. They are born from a shared sense of wonder, a belief that there is always one more secret to find. These are the Great Hunts, where dedicated communities spend years, even decades, poring over every pixel of a digital world, following cryptic clues, and collaborating to solve mysteries that were sometimes never even meant to be solved. These quests demonstrate how a game's world can become a stage for emergent narratives, stories created not by code, but by the collective imagination and effort of the player base. Chapter 11. The Last Big Secret, Shadow of the Colossus. Released in 2005, Shadow of the Colossus is a masterpiece of minimalist design. Its world, the Forbidden Lands, is a vast, beautiful, and almost entirely empty landscape, serving as little more than a path between its 16 colossal boss fights. Yet, this very emptiness became a canvas for one of gaming's most enduring mysteries. For over a decade, a dedicated community of fans, congregating on the official PlayStation forums, embarked on what they called the quest for the last big secret. The hunt was fueled by a few key factors: the game's enigmatic atmosphere, tantalizing clues from its creator, Fumito Ueda, who mentioned that he had originally planned for 48 colossi, and a deeply held belief that such a massive world couldn't possibly be so empty. Players were convinced that a hidden 17th Colossus or some other major Easter egg was waiting to be discovered. The community's search was exhaustive. They mapped every corner of the world, analyzed arcane symbols, and developed creative exploits to reach areas that were seemingly inaccessible. This led to the discovery of numerous secrets, some intentional and some the result of glitches. One of the first major discoveries was the Secret Garden, a lush, hidden area on top of the central shrine of worship, accessible only after building up nearly maximum stamina. While a beautiful reward, it was found before the game was even released to the public, and the community felt it wasn't the last big secret they were looking for. Their continued exploration unearthed other wonders. They found 3 giant, rideable eagles, far larger than any others in the game, which they nicknamed Lokis, 70, They used glitches like aggro launching, jumping off their horse at high speed to be flung into the air, to get on top of the towering shrine and explore out-of-bounds areas. 71. Using emulation, they even found the Dam, a massive, unfinished structure left in the game's files, a virtual green room used by the developers. 70. For years, the ultimate prize remained elusive. The community's most popular theory centered on a mysterious, bricked-up door in the lair of the 11th Colossus, which they believed held the final secret. 71. But no method could open it. The quest seemed destined to remain unsolved. Then, in 2018, the game was remade for the PlayStation 4. The developers at Blue Point Games, aware of the community's decade-long hunt, decided to give them the one thing they had always wanted: a final secret. They added a new collectible to the game: 79 mysterious glowing coins scattered across the land, a number that fans have speculated corresponds to the 79 steps to enlightenment. The hunt was on. It took the community years to find them all, but when the last coin was collected, a secret was unlocked. The bricked-up door in the Shrine of Worship, long a subject of speculation, finally opened. Inside was a hidden chamber, containing a throne and a powerful new weapon, the Sword of Dorman. It wasn't a 17th Colossus, but it was something more, a direct acknowledgement and reward from the developers to the community that had kept the spirit of their game alive for over a decade. The last big secret wasn't in the original game. It was created by the hunt itself. Chapter 12. The Hunt for Bigfoot. Grand Theft Auto. The forests of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas are vast, dark, and often shrouded in a thick, unnatural fog. In 2004, shortly after the game's release, players venturing into the rural area known as Back O Beyond felt a palpable sense of unease. The woods were quiet, empty, and deeply creepy. It was the perfect breeding ground for a myth. And soon, the whispers began on gaming forums. Bigfoot was in the game. The legend of the San Andreas Bigfoot became one of the most widespread and persistent myths of its era. The community's imagination ran wild, fueled by the game's eerie atmosphere. A flood of evidence appeared online: blurry screenshots, grainy videos, and first-hand accounts of encountering a large, hairy, ape-like creature in the woods. The hunt was on. Players spent countless hours scouring the forests, following elaborate, fan-made rituals they believed would make the creature spawn. The search was bolstered by what seemed to be in-game clues. Some players pointed to a section of the in-game map that vaguely resembled a footprint. Others noted that the game's credits included a special thanks to a developer with the nickname Bigfoot. For years, Rockstar Games officially denied the myth. In interviews, co-founder Terry Donovan stated unequivocally, "There is no Bigfoot in San Andreas." Modders combed through the game's files and found no model, no texture, and no code related to the creature. The myth was a hoax, but the legend was too powerful to die. Rockstar eventually realized that the community's desire for Bigfoot was a story in itself, and they began to embrace it. The first official nod came in the 2010 expansion, Red Dead Redemption: Undead Nightmare. In a side mission titled Birth of the Conservation Movement, players hunt down the last remaining Sasquatches, a surprisingly tragic and poignant questline. With the release of Grand Theft Auto V, Rockstar fully canonized the myth. The game is filled with Bigfoot references. In one mission, using a thermal scope from a helicopter reveals a Bigfoot-like heat signature in the woods, which vanishes if you look too closely. A hidden peyote plant allows the player to hallucinate and temporarily become Bigfoot, running through the forest. Finally, upon achieving 100% game completion, players unlock a special mission called The Last One. In it, Franklin hunts a creature believed to be the legendary Sasquatch, only to discover, at the end, that it's just a lonely, slightly deranged man in a costume. Even the definitive edition of San Andreas got in on the joke, adding an achievement for finding proof of the creature, forever immortalizing the myth that started it all. The hunt for Bigfoot, which began as a player-driven fantasy, had become an official, multi-game saga written by Rockstar itself. Chapter 13: The Chiliad Mystery, GTA 5. If the Bigfoot hunt was born from an empty forest, the greatest mystery of Grand Theft Auto V was sparked by a single cryptic drawing. At the very peak of the game's tallest mountain, Mount Chiliad, inside a cable car station, is a large mural painted on a wall. The mural depicts the mountain itself, with a series of lines and pathways running through it. At the top is a symbol resembling a UFO or an all-seeing eye. At the bottom are three other symbols: a cracked egg, a spaceship, and a figure wearing a jetpack. This mural launched one of the most extensive and complex video game hunts in history. A massive community centered around the subreddit r/Chiliad Mystery dedicated itself to deciphering its meaning. Players believed the mural was a map, a key to unlocking the game's ultimate secret, a playable jetpack, a beloved item from San Andreas, or perhaps even a rideable UFO. The hunt was incredibly intricate. Players discovered that the mural was linked to a series of UFOs hidden throughout the game world. One UFO would only appear directly above Mount Chiliad after the player achieved 100% game completion, at 3 a.m. during a thunderstorm. Other UFOs were found submerged deep in the ocean and hovering high above a military base. The community drew connections between the mural, strange glyphs that appeared on the mountain only in the rain, the in-game Epsilon program cult, and countless other seemingly random details across the vast map of San Andreas. For years, the central prizes of the mural, the jetpack and the egg, remained elusive. Unlike the Bigfoot myth, which was entirely player-created, the Chiliad mystery was a deliberate puzzle laid out by Rockstar. It was an alternate reality game played out not across websites, but within the game world itself, with new clues and pieces of the puzzle being added over several years through updates to Grand Theft Auto Online. Eventually, the hunt bore fruit. The jetpack was finally added to the game as part of the Doomsday Heist update for GTA Online, years after the initial search began. The alien egg also became part of a complex and hidden supply run mission in the gun running update. Triggering this mission required a massive, coordinated effort from the entire community, involving specific conditions and actions that took players months to figure out. The Chiliad mystery transformed from a simple hunt for an Easter egg into a long-form interactive narrative, a puzzle box that Rockstar slowly unlocked for its most dedicated players over the course of nearly half a decade. Chapter 14: Secret Church, Nier Automata. Sometimes, a mystery captivates the gaming world not over years, but in a single, explosive month. In June of 2022, a new Reddit user by the name of Sadfutago made a simple post on the Nier Automata subreddit. They asked, "How do you open the church?" and attached a video showing their character, A2, discovering a hidden door in the copied city area, a location that, for every other player in the world, was a solid wall. What followed was a month of intense speculation and detective work that drew in the entire gaming community. Sadfutago continued to post videos, revealing a long, twisting hallway that led to a beautiful, ornate church, an entire area that no one had ever seen in the 5 years since the game's release. The community was thrown into a frenzy. Was this cut content that only existed on a specific, unpatched version of the game? Was it an incredibly elaborate alternate reality game orchestrated by the game's eccentric director, Yoko Taro, to announce a new project? Or was it a mod of unprecedented complexity? The mystery deepened. Expert modders from the Nier community insisted that what Sadfutago was showing was impossible. The existing tools did not allow for the creation of custom maps and assets on this scale. The game's creators themselves weighed in, but only to add to the confusion. Producer Yosuke Saito retweeted a video of the church, calling it an eternal mystery, while Yoko Taro refused to confirm or deny anything, sticking to his policy of not answering questions about his games. For weeks, players tried everything to replicate Sadfutago's discovery, buying different versions of the game and attempting to perform obscure glitches, all to no avail. The church saga became a viral phenomenon. Then, on July 29th, 2022, the creators behind Sadfutago announced a Twitch stream. On the stream, they finally revealed the truth. The church was, in fact, a mod. It was created by a small team of 3 modders, Devola's Revenge, Woeful Wolf, and Raiderbee, who had secretly developed a powerful new set of modding tools that far surpassed anything publicly available. Had been an elaborate and brilliantly executed plan to reveal their creation to the world. They apologized for misleading the community, but explained their goal was to generate excitement before releasing their new tools for free. The reaction was overwhelmingly positive. The community was not angry at being fooled. They were in awe of the technical achievement and grateful for the thrilling mystery. The secret church of Nier Automata was a hoax, but it was a hoax that blew the game's modding scene wide open, giving the community the tools to create countless new secrets of their own. Part 4: Developers' Intent, Easter Eggs, Glitches, and Legends Made Real. Not all mysteries are born from the minds of players. Some are placed there deliberately by their creators. Hidden messages, inside jokes, and secret rewards for the most dedicated explorers. These are Easter eggs. Other times, strange phenomena emerge from the code unintentionally, as glitches and bugs that take on a life of their own. This section explores the fascinating space where developer intent and player discovery intersect, and how in the world of gaming, a rumor can become a feature, and a bug can become canon. This pattern showcases a unique feedback loop in gaming culture, where the audience's folklore and interpretation of errors can directly influence and shape the official creative direction of a series. Chapter 15. The First Easter Egg. Atari's Adventure /P. Our journey into the world of developer secrets begins with the very first one to be given a name. In the late 1970s, the video game publisher Atari had a strict policy of not crediting its programmers in its games. The company feared that if designers became famous, they would be poached by rival companies. 95. Warren Robinett, the programmer of the 1980 Atari 2600 game Adventure, disagreed with this policy. As an act of creative rebellion, he decided to hide his name within the game itself. He programmed a secret room that was incredibly difficult to access. To find it, a player had to locate an invisible, single-pixel object known as the gray dot, carry it to a specific location, and use it to pass through a wall that was otherwise solid. Inside this hidden room, the text created by Warren Robinett flashed on the screen. Robinett left Atari before the game was released and told no one about his hidden credit. Soon after, a 15-year-old player from Salt Lake City discovered the room and wrote a letter to Atari detailing how to find it. Atari's management initially wanted to remove the message and produce new cartridges, but the process was deemed too expensive. Instead, Steve Wright, the director of software development, had a brilliant idea. He suggested they keep the secret in the game and embrace it as a feature. He compared finding the hidden message to an Easter egg hunt, and in doing so, coined the term Easter egg as we know it today. Atari decided to include similar secrets in future games, and a beloved industry tradition was born from a single programmer's act of defiance. While Adventure is credited with naming the phenomenon, it wasn't the very first game to contain a hidden secret. That honor is now believed to belong to the 1977 arcade game Starship One, where programmer Ron Milner hid the message, "Hi Ron," accessible through a specific sequence of control inputs. Even earlier, the 1973 game Moonlander contained a hidden McDonald's restaurant on the lunar surface. Chapter 16. There is no cow level. Diablo. One of the most famous rumors of the early PC gaming era began in the town of Tristram, the hub world of the 1997 action RPG Diablo. In a pasture near the town, there were several cows. Players, noticing that they could click on the cows to make them moo, started a rumor. If you clicked on a specific cow enough times, a secret portal would open to a cow level. The rumor was entirely false, a joke that spread through the nascent online gaming community. The developers at Blizzard Entertainment were amused by the rumor and decided to play along. In the Diablo expansion pack, Hellfire, They included a hidden quest involving a non-player character dressed in a cowsuit. Then, in their 1998 strategy game, StarCraft, they included a cheat code that would grant the player an instant victory. That code was "There is no cow level." 99. The joke reached its ultimate conclusion with the release of Diablo 2 in 2000. This time, Blizzard decided to make the myth a reality. 102. On April 1st, 1999, as an April Fool's joke, they released a screenshot showing an Amazon character fighting axe-wielding cows. 105. Players were unsure if it was real, but within days of the game's release in June 2000, the community figured it out. By combining two specific items, the leg of a deceased character named Wirt and a Tome of Town portal inside a magical box called the Horadric Cube, players could open a red portal in the game's first town. This portal led to the Moo Moo Farm, a secret level filled with massive hordes of bipedal, polearm-wielding hell bovines. The level was ruled by a super unique boss, the Cow King, who dropped a unique set of armor. The player-made rumor had been fully canonized, becoming one of the most beloved Easter eggs in gaming history, a secret born from a joke that the developers decided to share with their entire community. Chapter 17, The Glitch That Multiplied, Missing No. Not all secrets are put there by developers. Some emerge from the cracks in the code. Bugs that create phenomena so strange they become legends. The most famous of these is undoubtedly Missing No from the original Pokemon Red and Blue games. Missing No, short for missing number, is a glitch Pokemon that players discovered they could encounter through a bizarre and specific sequence of actions known as the Old Man Glitch. The process involved watching an in-game tutorial on how to catch Pokemon in Viridian City, then immediately using the Fly ability to go to Cinnabar Island, and finally using Surf to travel up and down along the island's eastern coastline. Following these steps would cause wild encounters to spawn, including a strange, pixelated, L-shaped creature named Missing No. The technical cause of this glitch is a fascinating look into the limitations of early handheld games. The game uses a small piece of memory, a data buffer, to determine which wild Pokemon can appear in a given area. The eastern coast of Cinnabar Island was an unfinished area and was not assigned its own data. So the game would simply use the data from the last area the player was in. 108. During the catching tutorial, the game temporarily changes the player's name to Old Man and copies the player's actual name into that same data buffer. When the player then surfs on the Cinnabar coast, the game attempts to read the character data of the player's name as Pokemon encounter data. This mismatch causes the game to generate glitch Pokemon, including Missing No. 108. Encountering Missing No had dramatic effects on the game. Most famously, it would duplicate the sixth item in the player's inventory by 128. 108. This allowed players to get infinite rare candies, master balls, or any other item they desired. However, it also came with risks. The glitch would cause graphical anomalies and permanently corrupt the game's Hall of Fame data. 108 Nintendo of America even issued a warning in Nintendo Power magazine, advising players that contact with MissingNo could erase their save file. 108. Despite the risks, the promise of unlimited items made MissingNo one of the most sought-after and legendary glitches of all time. A ghost in the machine that players learned to tame for their own benefit. 111. The story just didn't fit. After winning a match, the character Ryu would proclaim, "You must defeat Shenlong to stand a chance." 112. This was a mistranslation. The original Japanese text referred to his signature special move, the Shoryuken, or Rising Dragon Punch. The translators mistook Shoryu for a name, Shenlong. Players were mystified. Who was Shenlong? The most popular theory was that he was Ryu and Ken's hidden master, a secret boss waiting to be unlocked. The rumor mill went into overdrive, and in its April 1992 issue, Electronic Gaming Monthly, EGM, magazine decided to turn the rumor into an elaborate April Fool's Day prank. The magazine published a detailed and completely fabricated guide on how to fight Shenlong. It involved playing through the entire game as Ryu, without taking a single point of damage, and then in the final fight against M. Bison, allowing the timer to run out for 10 consecutive rounds without either player landing a hit. If these impossible conditions were met, Shenlong would supposedly appear, throw M. Bison off the screen, and challenge the player to the true final battle. Despite the absurd difficulty, players took it seriously. The prank spread worldwide, reprinted as fact in magazines across the globe. Arcade owners reportedly complained to EGM about their machines being damaged by the sheer volume of quarters being pumped into them by players on a futile quest. The myth of Shenlong became so influential that it ended up shaping the future of the Street Fighter series. Capcom, the game's developer, took notice of the immense player interest in a hidden boss character. This is widely credited with inspiring the creation of Akuma, who debuted as a secret final boss in Super Street Fighter II Turbo in 1994. Akuma's method of appearance, playing through the game under specific, difficult conditions, and his role as a hidden, powerful master were directly in line with the Shenlong legend. Capcom later officially embraced the myth. The instruction manual for the SNES port of Street Fighter II explicitly named Shenlong as Ryu and Ken's master. 112. Years later, the character Gouken was introduced into the series lore as their true master. In a final, meta-textual twist, a 1997 EGM article revealed that Gouken and Shenlong were the same person, bringing the decades-old joke full circle. 113. A body scene. Chapter 19. The Pacifist Who Nukes. Nuclear Gandhi. One of the most enduring and amusing legends in strategy gaming is that of Nuclear Gandhi. The myth originates from the first Civilization game, released in 1991. It claims that a simple programming bug could transform Mahatma Gandhi, the leader of the Indian civilization and a historical icon of peace, into a nuclear-armed warmonger. 116. Story of the supposed glitch is quite specific. In the game, each leader had an aggression rating. Gandhi's was set to 1, the lowest possible value, making him extremely peaceful. The legend claims that when a player's civilization adopted the democracy form of government, it would grant a -2 modifier to the leader's aggression rating. For Gandhi, this would result in an aggression level of -1. The game supposedly used an 8-bit unsigned integer to store this value, which can only hold numbers from 0 to 255. A negative number would cause an integer underflow, wrapping the value around to the maximum possible, 255. This would instantly make the famously pacifist Gandhi the most aggressive leader in the game, with a penchant for using the nuclear weapons he had likely just researched. It's a fantastic story, but it's not true. In 2020, the series creator Sid Meier officially debunked the myth. He explained that integer variables in the C programming language used for the game were signed, not unsigned, so an underflow to 255 would not have occurred. Furthermore, he confirmed that changing governments had no effect on a leader's aggression level. The aggression ratings themselves were also much simpler than the myth suggests, with only 3 possible levels. The real origin of the perception is likely much simpler. Because India is a science-focused civilization in the game, Gandhi was often one of the first leaders to develop nuclear technology. And in civilization, any leader once armed with nuclear weapons becomes more aggressive and willing to use them. The sight of the famously peaceful Gandhi threatening nuclear war was simply so jarring and memorable that players created a legend to explain it. Like the cow level, the developers at Firaxis Games found the nuclear Gandhi myth so amusing that they decided to make it a reality. In Civilization V, Gandhi is intentionally programmed with the highest possible rating, a 12 out of 10 for building and using nuclear weapons, making the urban legend an official, canonical part of his in-game personality. Chapter 20. More secrets and glitches. The history of gaming is littered with countless other myths, secrets, and programming quirks that have captivated players for decades. L is real 2401. One of the most famous myths of the Nintendo 64 era was the belief that Luigi was a secret playable character in Super Mario 64. The rumor was centered on a blurry, unreadable plaque on a star statue in the castle's courtyard. Fans convinced themselves the text read L is real 2401. The number was thought to be a clue, perhaps related to the total number of coins in the game. The truth is that Luigi was, in fact, planned to be in the game. Shigeru Miyamoto confirmed that a 2-player mode featuring Luigi was in development, but was ultimately cut due to the N64's memory limitations. The myth was so powerful that when the game was remade for the Nintendo DS, Luigi was added as a fully playable character. In 2020, the legend was finally put to rest when a massive Nintendo data leak, dubbed the Giga Leak, revealed the original unused 3D model for Luigi from the N64 version, proving that L was in fact real all along. In 2020, the legend was finally put to rest when a massive Nintendo leak, dubbed the Giga Leak, revealed the original, unused 3D model for Luigi from the N64 version, proving that L was in fact real all along. Within the program, the R-Wing in the Ocarina of Time, deep within the code of Oregon City, lies an unexpected visitor from another Nintendo franchise, a fully functional model of an R-Wing fighter ship from Star Fox 64, 122. This was not an intended crossover. The developers used the R-Wing model as a placeholder during development to test the flight patterns of the dragon boss, Volvagia, and simply never removed it from the game's final code. 122. For many years, this secret was only accessible through the use of cheat devices like a Game Shark. However, in 2020, speedrunners discovered a new, incredibly complex glitch known as arbitrary code execution. By manipulating save file names in a very specific way, they found they could essentially write new code into the game's memory, allowing them to do almost anything, including spawning the long-hidden R-Wings into the game without any external cheat devices. The Chris Houlihan Room. In 1990, Nintendo Power magazine held a contest where the grand prize was to have your name appear in an upcoming NES game. The winner was a boy named Chris Houlihan. His prize manifested in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past as a secret room filled with blue rupees and a telepathic tile that read, "My name is Chris Houlihan. This is my top secret room." The room was not meant to be found through normal gameplay. It was a failsafe room. If the game encountered an error while loading a new area, it would default the player to this safe location. 127. This made it incredibly difficult to access intentionally, turning the room into a legend. For years, the identity of the real Chris Houlihan was also a mystery, until he was finally located in 2025, confirming the story behind one of gaming's most personal Easter eggs. 126. The Stubborn Zidane. An Easter egg can be defined by its obscurity, and few are more obscure than this one from Final Fantasy IX. Near the beginning of the game, the protagonist Zidane is in a briefing for a plan to kidnap Princess Garnet. The player is given a dialogue choice to confirm the target. If the player repeatedly chooses the wrong answer, insisting the target is Queen Brane, the dialogue simply loops. Most players would correct their mistake and move on. However, if a player is stubborn enough to choose the wrong answer 64 times in a row, a special scene triggers. A fellow troop member, Ruby, bursts into the room and yells at Zidane for being more stubborn than a grumpy mule. 100 Birdie. The sheer absurdity of the trigger, requiring over 60 identical incorrect inputs, has led fans to speculate on its purpose, with one popular theory suggesting the number 64 is a subtle jab at the Nintendo 64. The console Square famously abandoned in favor of the PlayStation for Final Fantasy VII. 131. Part V. The Unfinished and Unexplained. Cancelled games and enduring questions. Our final journey takes us into the ghost worlds of gaming. The games that were never finished, the stories that were left untold, and the mysteries that endure to this day. These are the tales of what could have been, and the questions that keep communities searching for answers decades later. What is absent from a game, whether by cancellation, by the editor's knife, or by deliberate narrative choice, can be as influential as what is present, creating a space for the community's imagination to build legends. Chapter 21: Development Hell, Duke Nukem Forever. Few games in history are as synonymous with development hell as Duke Nukem Forever, announced in April 1997 as the highly anticipated sequel to the groundbreaking Duke Nukem 3D. The game would spend the next 14 years in a torturous, seemingly endless development cycle, becoming the industry's most infamous punchline. It holds the Guinness World Record for the longest development time for a video game. The project's troubles began almost immediately. The developer, 3D Realms, initially licensed the Quake 2 engine, but director George Broussard, obsessed with having the latest technology, decided to switch to the then-new Unreal Engine in 1998. This decision required the team to scrap much of their work and effectively restart development. This became a repeating pattern. Broussard was reportedly a perfectionist who suffered from severe feature creep. Whenever a new, popular game was released with an innovative feature, he would demand it be incorporated into Duke Nukem Forever, leading to constant reboots and a lack of clear direction. Years passed. Release dates came and went. The game became a running joke, with its tagline, "When it's done," becoming increasingly ironic. By 2009, after 12 years of development and little to show for it, publisher Take-Two Interactive sued 3D Realms for failing to deliver the game. Shortly after, 3D Realms downsized and laid off the entire Duke Nukem Forever development team. The story took one final twist in 2010, when Gearbox Software, creators of Borderlands, acquired the rights to the franchise and took on the monumental task of finishing the game. They cobbled together the disparate assets and code left behind by 3D Realms and finally released Duke Nukem Forever in June 2011. The reception was overwhelmingly negative. After 14 years of waiting, the game felt hopelessly dated, with critics panning its simplistic mechanics, unpolished design, and juvenile humor that had long gone out of fashion. In 2022, a 2001 build of the game was leaked online, giving players a fascinating glimpse into one of the many versions of the game that never was, a digital ghost from one of gaming's most troubled productions. Chapter 22: Cancelled Worlds, the Vaporware Hall of Fame. For every game that makes it to store shelves, there are countless others that vanish during development, becoming vaporware. Games that are announced but never released. These canceled projects often take on a legendary status, their potential forever idealized in the minds of fans. StarCraft Ghost. In 2002, Blizzard Entertainment announced StarCraft Ghost, a third-person stealth action shooter set in the popular StarCraft universe. The game was to star Nova, a psychic Terran operative known as a ghost. The project had a troubled development, passing from its original developer, Nihilistic Software, to Swingin' Ape Studios in 2004. Despite generating significant hype, the game was put on indefinite hold in 2006 and officially canceled in 2014. Blizzard president Mike Morhaime later explained that the massive success of World of Warcraft and the simultaneous development of StarCraft II had consumed all of the company's resources, leaving none for Ghost. For years, all fans had were old trailers and a prequel novel. Then, in 2020, a playable build of the game was leaked online, finally allowing players to experience a piece of the game that had been lost for nearly 2 decades. Silent Hills and PT. In August 2014, a mysterious demo titled PT for Playable Teaser was released for free on the PlayStation 4. It was a terrifying, photorealistic, first-person horror experience set in a single looping hallway. Players who managed to solve its cryptic final puzzle were rewarded with a stunning reveal. PT was a teaser for Silent Hills, a new installment in the legendary horror franchise, to be directed by Hideo Kojima and filmmaker Guillermo del Toro, and starring actor Norman Reedus. PT was an instant phenomenon, hailed as one of the scariest games ever made. But the excitement was short-lived. In 2015, following a very public and acrimonious split between Kojima and the publisher Konami, Silent Hills was abruptly cancelled. In a move that drew widespread criticism, Konami not only cancelled the game, but also removed PT from the PlayStation Store entirely, making it impossible for anyone to re-download it. This act turned any PS4 with PT still installed into a valuable collector's item and cemented the game's status as a legendary, unobtainable masterpiece. Star Wars 1313. At E3 2012, LucasArts unveiled Star Wars 1313, a visually stunning, mature-rated action game built on Unreal Engine 3. The game was set in the criminal underworld of Coruscant's level 1313 and was intended to focus on gadget-based bounty hunter gameplay. It was later revealed that the game's protagonist was to be a young Boba Fett. The demo wowed audiences and was seen as a bold new direction for Star Wars games. However, in 2013, the Walt Disney Company acquired Lucasfilm. As part of a major restructuring, Disney shut down LucasArts as an internal development studio, ceasing production on all its projects, including 1313. Despite hopes that the project might be revived by another studio, the trademark was abandoned in 2014, and the game was officially shelved, leaving behind only a few breathtaking gameplay videos and concept art of what might have been. Thrill Kill, perhaps the most notorious cancelled game of the PlayStation era. Thrill Kill was a 4-player fighting game developed by Paradox Development. It was designed from the ground up to be controversial, featuring a BDSM-inspired aesthetic, extreme violence, and sexually suggestive finishing moves. The game was nearly complete and scheduled for a 1998 release by publisher Virgin Interactive. However, Virgin's North American operations were acquired by Electronic Arts, EA. After reviewing the game, EA's executives deemed it too violent and tasteless for publication and canceled its release. In an unprecedented move, EA also refused to sell the rights to any other publisher, ensuring the game would never see an official release. The nearly finished game was soon leaked online, where it became a cult classic on the pirating scene. Its game engine was later repurposed and used as the foundation for the much tamer fighting game, Wu-Tang Shaolin Style. Chapter 23: The Unseen Story, Knights of the Old Republic 2. Sometimes a game is released, but its story remains unfinished. Such was the case with 2004's Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. Developed by Obsidian Entertainment, the sequel to BioWare's beloved RPG was famously rushed to meet a holiday release deadline, with publisher LucasArts giving the team less than 18 months for development. The result was a game that felt brilliant but incomplete. It launched with numerous bugs, and its story was disjointed, with major character arcs left unresolved, and an ending that was so abrupt and confusing, it left many players feeling dissatisfied. Players who dug into the game's files discovered a vast amount of cut content, dialogue, quests, and even entire levels that had been left on the cutting room floor. This discovery sparked one of the most ambitious and celebrated fan restoration projects in gaming history. A group of modders, originally known as Team Gizka, and later led by others, began the painstaking process of piecing the game back together. Their work culminated in the Sith Lords Restored Content Modification, TSL-RCM 155. Using unused audio files and other assets left in the game, the modders restored hours of missing content. This included expanded dialogue that fleshed out companion characters, reinstated quests that resolved dangling plot threads, and a completely restored level, the HK-50 Droid Factory, where the player takes control of the assassin droid HK-47, 155. The mod also fixed over 500 bugs that were present in the original release, 155. The TSL-RCM was so comprehensive and so essential to understanding the game's true narrative that it is now considered by many to be the definitive way to play KOTOR 2. Its success was so profound that when the game was officially re-released on Steam, the platform integrated Steam Workshop support, specifically to allow for the easy installation of the TSL-RCM, giving a fan-made passion project an official stamp of approval. Chapter 24: Unsolved Mysteries and Enduring Theories. And so we arrive at the final chapter of our journey, in the realm of questions that have no definitive answers. These are the enduring mysteries and fan theories that keep communities debating for decades, turning players into detectives, literary analysts, and philosophers. The G-Man. For over 2 decades, fans of the Half-Life series have asked the same question: who or what is the G-Man? This strange, gaunt man in a blue suit, with his odd speech patterns and a mysterious briefcase, appears at key moments throughout the series. He seems to possess the ability to manipulate time and space, putting Gordon Freeman into stasis and deploying him at critical junctures for the benefit of his unseen employers. 161 theories about his identity are numerous. Is he a member of a powerful alien race, orchestrating events from behind the scenes? Is he a future version of Gordon Freeman himself? Is he a personification of fate, a cosmic bureaucrat ensuring that events unfold as they must. 163. The games provide only cryptic clues, leaving one of gaming's most iconic characters an enigma. Squall is dead. This popular fan theory for Final Fantasy VIII posits that the game's moody protagonist, Squall Leonhardt, actually dies at the end of the first disc. During a climactic battle, he is impaled by a massive ice shard thrown by the sorceress Idea. 165. He falls, seemingly dead. The theory argues that everything that happens from Disc 2 onward, the surreal plot twists, the convenient resolution of all of Squall's emotional conflicts, and his blossoming romance with Rinoa, is a dying dream, his life flashing before his eyes in his final moments. Proponents point to the increasingly bizarre and fantastical nature of the plot, as well as strange, dream-like imagery in the game's final cutscene, such as Squall's face appearing as a black void as evidence. The ending of Ico, the ending of the minimalist masterpiece Ico, is beautiful and seemingly hopeful. After defeating the evil queen, Ico is washed ashore on a beach, where he finds Yorda, the girl he fought to save, alive and well. But a darker interpretation exists. Before the final battle, the queen states that her soul will possess Yorda's body, and that it is her inescapable fate. This theory suggests that the queen succeeded. The Yorda that Ico finds on the beach is not Yorda at all, but the queen in her new body, smiling in victory. The game also features a secret watermelon ending, a playful bonus for a second playthrough where Ico and Yorda celebrate their escape by sharing a watermelon on the beach. Ica Village. Not a developer-made mystery, but a player-created one. Ica Village was a town in Animal Crossing New Leaf that became a legendary destination for players to visit via the game's Dream Suite feature. The town tells a silent, environmental story of a young girl named Ica and her descent into tragedy. Players walk through 4 houses, each representing a different stage of her life. The journey begins with a happy birthday party, but soon progresses through rooms filled with unsettling imagery. A maze of pitfalls, a room filled with staring eyes, dozens of dolls surrounding an axe, a graveyard, and a pair of red shoes left by the seashore. A symbol in Japanese culture often associated with suicide. The story is entirely interpretive, with popular theories suggesting a narrative of an abusive family, a murderous doll, or a girl's descent into madness. The Fallout 3 Numbers Station, a creepypasta that blurred the lines of reality. This legend claimed that by performing a specific set of actions in Fallout 3, namely, killing the radio DJ 3Dog and destroying the Enclave base Raven Rock, the in-game Galaxy News radio station would transform into a numbers station. The station would broadcast a series of numbers followed by Morse code. When deciphered, these messages were said to be predictions of real-world future events, complete with dates and times. The legend claimed the game had predicted the death of actor Gary Coleman and the 2010 BP oil spill. While a compelling story, it has been thoroughly debunked as a hoax, with no such code or audio files existing in the game. The Hell Valley Sky Trees. In the Shiverburn galaxy of Super Mario Galaxy 2, if the player enters first-person view and looks up at the surrounding cliffs, they can see them. 3 tall, slender, shadowy figures silently watching Mario from a distance. These figures are never explained in the game. Data miners discovered that their internal file name is Hell Valley Skytree, adding to their ominous nature. 181 fans have speculated about their meaning, with a popular theory suggesting they are somewhat related to Kodama, the silent, watchful tree spirits from Japanese folklore, a theory that fits with the game's otherworldly setting. Chapter 25: The Lost Worlds of Halo 2. The ending of Halo 2 is famously abrupt. Master Chief arrives on a Forerunner ship above Earth, promising to finish this fight. And then, the credits roll. This cliffhanger was not the original plan. The development of Halo 2 was notoriously rushed, and a huge portion of the game's intended final act was cut. In fact, much of what would become the first half of Halo 3, the epic battles in the African savannah and the return to the Ark, was originally meant to be the conclusion of Halo 2. The developers simply ran out of time. Chapter 26: The Scars of New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas is beloved for its complex story and branching choices, but the game that was released was a shadow of what its developers at Obsidian Entertainment had envisioned. The game was famously developed in just 18 months, and a staggering amount of content was left on the cutting room floor. Entire areas of the map, factions, and questlines were removed. Perhaps the most significant cut was a companion character named Ulysses. He was meant to be a Legion companion with a deep, complex backstory. The developers recorded so many voice lines for him that the audio files were too large to fit on the Xbox 360 game disc. As a result, he was cut from the game for all platforms, only to be reintroduced later as the antagonist of the Lonesome Road DLC. For years, PC players have used a mod called Cutting Room Floor to restore much of this lost content, offering a glimpse into the even richer world that almost was. Chapter 27: Ocarina of Time's Lost Dungeons and Spells. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was originally designed for a peripheral that was never released outside of Japan, the Nintendo 64 disk drive. When the hardware was delayed, the game had to be converted to a standard cartridge, which had significantly less storage space. This forced the developers to cut a massive amount of content. Data miners have discovered evidence of entire dungeons that were removed, including a full, playable dungeon inside the Temple of Time. Another major cut was the function of the 6 medallions. Originally, they were not just story items. They were equipable items that would have granted Link magical spells, like a fire spell from the Fire Medallion, which could be combined with the Fairy Bow for different effects. The developers reportedly ran out of ideas for unique spells and decided to scrap the system, turning the medallions into the symbolic keys we know today. Chapter 28: The Clowns of Manhunt. The 2003 game, Manhunt, is one of the most controversial video games ever made. A brutal stealth horror game that was banned in several countries. It is a game so dark that it's hard to imagine any content being considered too much. And yet, there was. The developers at Rockstar originally planned for a gang called the Clowns. They were a group of deranged men dressed in clown makeup, and their designs were deeply unsettling. One of them was even designed to resemble the notorious serial killer John Wayne Gacy. Ultimately, the developers decided that this particular gang crossed a line, even for a game like Manhunt, and they were cut before the game was released. Chapter 29: Lara Croft's Darker Side. The ending of Tomb Raider Underworld sees Lara Croft and her longtime rival, Amanda Everett, reach a grudging truce after defeating their common enemy. They part ways, their conflict unresolved but paused. The original ending, however, was far less ambiguous and much darker. In the cut version, as Lara is walking away in a snowstorm, Amanda attacks her from behind. Lara, in self-defense, shoots Amanda in the leg, immobilizing her, and then simply walks away, leaving her rival to die alone in the freezing wilderness. The developers felt this ending was too bleak and out of character for Lara, and opted for the more open-ended conclusion. Chapter 30: Jimmy Hopkins' Acid Bath. Rockstar's game Bully is often described as a more lighthearted, teenage version of Grand Theft Auto. While the game has its dark moments, it generally maintains a comedic, satirical tone. One cutscene, however, would have pushed the game into much darker territory. In the final mission, Showdown at the Plant, the protagonist Jimmy Hopkins faces off against the main antagonist, Edgar. In the final game, losing this fight simply results in a standard, wasted game over screen. But originally, a unique and gruesome cutscene was planned. If Jimmy lost, Edgar would have pushed him into a nearby vat of acid, and then stood and mocked him as he drowned. The scene was cut, likely because it was deemed far too grim for the game's overall T for Teen rating. Part 7: The Digital Archaeologists, Unearthing Buried Secrets. Some secrets are not meant to be found. They are the digital ghosts of development, the remnants of ideas left behind in the code. But for some players, the game world doesn't end at the boundaries set by the developers. They are the digital archaeologists, the explorers who spend years digging through game files, exploiting glitches, and sharing their findings on forgotten forums, all in the hope of unearthing one last secret. Chapter 31: The Secret Dens of the Ratman. Throughout the sterile, pristine test chambers of Aperture Science in the Portal series, there are hidden places, scraps of humanity in the heart of the machine. These are the dens of Doug Ratman, a character you never see, but whose story is one of the most compelling in the series. Ratman was a schizophrenic scientist at Aperture who, unlike his colleagues, was deeply paranoid about the facility's new artificial intelligence, GLaDOS. He was right to be. When GLaDOS was activated, she flooded the facility with neurotoxin, killing everyone. Everyone, that is, except Ratman, who had prepared for the worst. For years, he lived in the walls of Aperture, a ghost in his own workplace. His only companion, a talking weighted companion cube that may or may not have been a hallucination. His story is told entirely through the secret dens he created, hidden behind loose wall panels. In these dens, players can find his frantic scribblings, complex murals that tell the story of the facility's fall, and the origin of one of gaming's most famous phrases: "The cake is a lie." It was Ratman who, acting on a hunch, broke into the test subject files and moved a single name to the top of the list: Chell. He believed her tenacity was the only thing that could stop GLaDOS. He was the unseen hand that set the entire story of Portal in motion. His ultimate fate is unknown. The last we learn of him is that he was shot by a turret and, with his last ounce of strength, ensured Chell's cryogenic stasis pod had power before crawling into one himself and falling asleep. Chapter 32. The Man Shattered Across Time and Space, W.D. Gaster. In the world of Undertale, there is a character who does not exist. His name is W.D. Gaster. According to the game's lore, he was the royal scientist before Dr. Alphys. He created the core, the massive power source for the entire underground. And then he fell into his creation and was shattered across time and space, effectively erased from existence. Gaster cannot be encountered through normal gameplay. His story is pieced together from fragments hidden deep within the game's code, accessible only through luck or deliberate file manipulation. The game has a hidden fun value, a random number assigned when you start a new game. If this value is a specific number, strange things can happen. Gray. Ghost-like characters, called Gaster followers, may appear, speaking in hushed tones about the man who was forgotten. If the value is 66, there is a small chance a mysterious gray door will appear in a hallway in Waterfall. Behind it is a single, silent, black and white figure, known in the files only as Mystery Man. If you interact with him, he makes a strange face and vanishes. The most direct message from Gaster is found in a hidden room, Room Gaster, which contains a single cryptic message written in the Wingdings font. Entry number 17. Dark, darker, yet darker. The darkness keeps growing, the shadows cutting deeper. Photon readings, negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think? The WD in his name is believed to stand for Wingdings, linking him to the game's skeleton brothers, Sans and Papyrus, who are also named after fonts. He remains one of gaming's most compelling mysteries, a character defined entirely by his absence. Chapter 33. The Kill Screen of Donkey Kong. For decades, the highest possible score in the original arcade version of Donkey Kong was a known quantity, not because players couldn't get better, but because the game itself would break. At level 22, the game becomes impossible. This is the infamous Donkey Kong kill screen. For years, it was believed to be an insurmountable wall, the end of the game. But it wasn't an intentional ending. It was a bug. The game calculates the bonus timer for each level using a formula: 100 times the result of 10 times the level number plus 4. At level 22, this calculation results in the number 260. The problem is, the game uses an 8-bit counter to store this value, and an 8-bit counter can only hold a number up to 255. When it tries to store 260, it overflows, wrapping back around to 4. The game then calculates the timer based on this incorrect value, giving the player only a few seconds to complete the stage. Not nearly enough time to reach the top. For 44 years, this was the end. But in 2024, a speedrunner using tool assistance and a frame-perfect glitch discovered that, with a bit of luck from the game's random number generator, it was theoretically possible to beat the level. The kill screen had been killed. Chapter 34: The Crypts Beneath Karazhan. In the world of Warcraft, beneath the magical tower of Karazhan, lies a place that for years was only spoken of in whispers. The Karazhan Crypts. It was an area that was in the game's files from the very beginning, but was sealed off, inaccessible through normal gameplay. Players, however, found ways in. Using glitches and clever tricks, they would phase through the walls and explore the dark, unfinished catacombs below. What they found was one of the most disturbing locations in the game's history. There were massive piles of bones, gated tombs from which you could hear a faint heartbeat, and the most infamous room of all, the Upside-Down Sinners, a flooded chamber where hundreds of human corpses were chained upside down, floating eerily in the water. For over a decade, the crypts remained a mystery. They were a remnant of an earlier design for Karazhan, a time when the raid was meant to be much larger and part of the open world. The developers had scrapped the area, but never removed it. The crypts became a legendary piece of WoW folklore, a pilgrimage site for urban explorers. Finally, in the Legion expansion, Blizzard officially acknowledged the area, making it accessible as part of a hidden quest. And in the Season of Discovery, it was transformed into a full-fledged dungeon, its dark secrets finally given a purpose. Chapter 35: The Strange Man of Red Dead Redemption. In the world of Red Dead Redemption, John Marston meets many strange characters, but none are as enigmatic as the man in the top hat and suit, who seems to know everything about him. He is known only as the Strange Man. He appears in a series of side missions, testing John's morality with philosophical questions and impossible choices. He seems to know John's past and, more chillingly, his future. In their final encounter, John meets him on a bluff overlooking Beecher's Hope. The Strange Man calls it a fine spot. It is the exact spot where John Marston will eventually be buried. When John, enraged, fires his revolver at the man, the bullets pass through him harmlessly. The man simply turns and vanishes. The community has debated his identity for years. Is he God? Is he the devil? Is he death itself, an accountant tallying John's sins? Rockstar co-founder Dan Houser eventually shed some light on the mystery, stating that the Strange Man was intended to be a manifestation of your shadow, your karma, the devil. But he also left the door open, saying they never fully clarified the limits of his power, or if he was unique to John Marston. The Strange Man remains one of gaming's most haunting and unresolved figures. Chapter 25: The Lost Worlds of Halo 2. The ending of Halo 2 is famously abrupt. Master Chief arrives on a Forerunner ship above Earth, promising to finish this fight. And then, the credits roll. This cliffhanger was not the original plan. The development of Halo 2 was notoriously rushed, and a huge portion of the game's intended final act was cut. In fact, much of what would become the first half of Halo 3, the epic battles in the African savanna and the return to the Ark, was originally meant to be the conclusion of Halo 2. The developers simply ran out of time. Chapter 26: The Scars of New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas is beloved for its complex story and branching choices, but the game that was released was a shadow of what its developers at Obsidian Entertainment had envisioned. The game was famously developed in just 18 months, and a staggering amount of content was left on the cutting room floor. Entire areas of the map, factions, and questlines were removed. Perhaps the most significant cut was a companion character named Ulysses. He was meant to be a Legion companion with a deep, complex backstory. The developers recorded so many voice lines for him that the audio files were too large to fit on the Xbox 360 game disc. As a result, he was cut from the game for all platforms, only to be reintroduced later as the antagonist of the Lonesome Road DLC. For years, PC players have used a mod called Cutting Room Floor to restore much of this lost content, offering a glimpse into the even richer world that almost was. Chapter 27: Ocarina of Time's Lost Dungeons and Spells. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was originally designed for a peripheral that was never released outside of Japan, the Nintendo 64 disk drive. When the hardware was delayed, the game had to be converted to a standard cartridge, which had significantly less storage space. This forced the developers to cut a massive amount of content. Data miners have discovered evidence of entire dungeons that were removed, including a full, playable dungeon inside the Temple of Time. Another major cut was the function of the 6 medallions. Originally, they were not just story items. They were equipable items that would have granted Link magical spells, like a fire spell from the Fire Medallion, which could be combined with the Fairy Bow for different effects. The developers reportedly ran out of ideas for unique spells and decided to scrap the system, turning the medallions into the symbolic keys we know today. Chapter 28: The Clowns of Manhunt. The 2003 game, Manhunt, is one of the most controversial video games ever made. A brutal stealth horror game that was banned in several countries. It is a game so dark that it's hard to imagine any content being considered too much. And yet, there was. The developers at Rockstar originally planned for a gang called the Clowns. They were a group of deranged men dressed in clown makeup, and their designs were deeply unsettling. One of them was even designed to resemble the notorious serial killer John Wayne Gacy. Ultimately, the developers decided that this particular gang crossed a line, even for a game like Manhunt, and they were cut before the game was released. Chapter 29: Lara Croft's Darker Side. The ending of Tomb Raider Underworld sees Lara Croft and her longtime rival, Amanda Everett, reach a grudging truce after defeating their common enemy. They part ways, their conflict unresolved but paused. The original ending, however, was far less ambiguous and much darker. In the cut version, as Lara is walking away in a snowstorm, Amanda attacks her from behind. Lara, in self-defense, shoots Amanda in the leg, immobilizing her, and then simply walks away, leaving her rival to die alone in the freezing wilderness. The developers felt this ending was too bleak and out of character for Lara, and opted for the more open-ended conclusion. Chapter 30: Jimmy Hopkins' Acid Bath. Rockstar's game Bully is often described as a more lighthearted, teenage version of Grand Theft Auto. While the game has its dark moments, it generally maintains a comedic, satirical tone. One cutscene, however, would have pushed the game into much darker territory. In the final mission, Showdown at the Plant, the protagonist Jimmy Hopkins faces off against the main antagonist, Edgar. In the final game, losing this fight simply results in a standard, wasted game over screen. But originally, a unique and gruesome cutscene was planned. If Jimmy lost, Edgar would have pushed him into a nearby vat of acid, and then stood and mocked him as he drowned. The scene was cut, likely because it was deemed far too grim for the game's overall T for Teen rating. Part 7: The Digital Archaeologists, Unearthing Buried Secrets. Some secrets are not meant to be found. They are the digital ghosts of development, the remnants of ideas left behind in the code. But for some players, the game world doesn't end at the boundaries set by the developers. They are the digital archaeologists, the explorers who spend years digging through game files, exploiting glitches, and sharing their findings on forgotten forums, all in the hope of unearthing one last secret. Chapter 31: The Secret Dens of the Ratman. Throughout the sterile, pristine test chambers of Aperture Science in the Portal series, there are hidden places, scraps of humanity in the heart of the machine. These are the dens of Doug Ratman, a character you never see, but whose story is one of the most compelling in the series. Ratman was a schizophrenic scientist at Aperture who, unlike his colleagues, was deeply paranoid about the facility's new artificial intelligence, GLaDOS. He was right to be. When GLaDOS was activated, she flooded the facility with neurotoxin, killing everyone. Everyone, that is, except Ratman, who had prepared for the worst. For years, he lived in the walls of Aperture, a ghost in his own workplace. His only companion, a talking weighted companion cube that may or may not have been a hallucination. His story is told entirely through the secret dens he created, hidden behind loose wall panels. In these dens, players can find his frantic scribblings, complex murals that tell the story of the facility's fall, and the origin of one of gaming's most famous phrases: "The cake is a lie." It was Ratman who, acting on a hunch, broke into the test subject files and moved a single name to the top of the list: Chell. He believed her tenacity was the only thing that could stop GLaDOS. He was the unseen hand that set the entire story of Portal in motion. His ultimate fate is unknown. The last we learn of him is that he was shot by a turret and, with his last ounce of strength, ensured Chell's cryogenic stasis pod had power before crawling into one himself and falling asleep. Chapter 32: The Man Shattered Across Time and Space, W.D. Gaster. In the world of Undertale, there is a character who does not exist. His name is W.D. Gaster. According to the game's lore, he was the royal scientist before Dr. Alphys. He created the core, the massive power source for the entire underground. And then he fell into his creation and was shattered across time and space, effectively erased from existence. Gaster cannot be encountered through normal gameplay. His story is pieced together from fragments hidden deep within the game's code, accessible only through luck or deliberate file manipulation. The game has a hidden fun value, a random number assigned when you start a new game. If this value is a specific number, strange things can happen. Gray. Ghost-like characters, called Gaster followers, may appear, speaking in hushed tones about the man who was forgotten. If the value is 66, there is a small chance a mysterious gray door will appear in a hallway in Waterfall. Behind it is a single, silent, black and white figure, known in the files only as Mystery Man. If you interact with him, he makes a strange face and vanishes. The most direct message from Gaster is found in a hidden room, Room Gaster, which contains a single cryptic message written in the Wingdings font. Entry number 17. Dark, darker, yet darker. The darkness keeps growing, the shadows cutting deeper. Photon readings, negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think? The WD in his name is believed to stand for Wingdings, linking him to the game's skeleton brothers, Sans and Papyrus, who are also named after fonts. He remains one of gaming's most compelling mysteries, a character defined entirely by his absence. Chapter 33. The Kill Screen of Donkey Kong. For decades, the highest possible score in the original arcade version of Donkey Kong was a known quantity, not because players couldn't get better, but because the game itself would break. At level 22, the game becomes impossible. This is the infamous Donkey Kong kill screen. For years, it was believed to be an insurmountable wall, the end of the game. But it wasn't an intentional ending. It was a bug. The game calculates the bonus timer for each level using a formula. 100 times the result of 10 times the level number plus 4. At level 22, this calculation results in the number 260. The problem is, the game uses an 8-bit counter to store this value, and an 8-bit counter can only hold a number up to 255. When it tries to store 260, it overflows, wrapping back around to 4. The game then calculates the timer based on this incorrect value, giving the player only a few seconds to complete the stage. Not nearly enough time to reach the top. For 44 years, this was the end. But in 2024, a speedrunner using tool assistance and a frame-perfect glitch discovered that, with a bit of luck from the game's random number generator, it was theoretically possible to beat the level. The kill screen had been killed. Chapter 34. The Crypts Beneath Karazhan. In the world of Warcraft, beneath the magical tower of Karazhan, lies a place that for years was only spoken of in whispers. The Karazhan Crypts. It was an area that was in the game's files from the very beginning, but was sealed off, inaccessible through normal gameplay. Players, however, found ways in. Using glitches and clever tricks, they would phase through the walls and explore the dark, unfinished catacombs below. What they found was one of the most disturbing locations in the game's history. There were massive piles of bones, gated tombs from which you could hear a faint heartbeat, and the most infamous room of all, the upside-down sinners, a flooded chamber where hundreds of human corpses were chained upside down, floating eerily in the water. For over a decade, the crypts remained a mystery. They were a remnant of an earlier design for Karazhan, a time when the raid was meant to be much larger and part of the open world. The developers had scrapped the area, but never removed it. The crypts became a legendary piece of WoW folklore, a pilgrimage site for urban explorers. Finally, in the Legion expansion, Blizzard officially acknowledged the area, making it accessible as part of a hidden quest. And in the Season of Discovery, it was transformed into a full-fledged dungeon, its dark secrets finally given a purpose. Chapter 35: The Strange Man of Red Dead Redemption. In the world of Red Dead Redemption, John Marston meets many strange characters, but none are as enigmatic as the man in the top hat and suit, who seems to know everything about him. He is known only as the Strange Man. He appears in a series of side missions, testing John's morality with philosophical questions and impossible choices. He seems to know John's past and, more chillingly, his future. In their final encounter, John meets him on a bluff overlooking Beecher's Hope. The Strange Man calls it a fine spot. It is the exact spot where John Marston will eventually be buried. When John, enraged, fires his revolver at the man, the bullets pass through him harmlessly. The man simply turns and vanishes. The community has debated his identity for years. Is he God? Is he the devil? Is he death itself, an accountant tallying John's sins? Rockstar co-founder Dan Houser eventually shed some light on the mystery, stating that the Strange Man was intended to be a manifestation of your shadow, your karma, the devil. But he also left the door open, saying they never fully clarified the limits of his power, or if he was unique to John Marston. The Strange Man remains one of gaming's most haunting and unresolved figures. Chapter 61: Blowing on the Cartridge. It was a sacred ritual for a generation of gamers. When a game refused to load, displaying only a blinking gray screen, there was one solution passed down from older siblings and friends. Take the cartridge out and blow into it. With a forceful puff of air, you would dislodge the dust that was surely the cause of the problem. Then, reinserting the cartridge, you would be greeted with the game's title screen. It felt like magic. The truth, however, is a bit more mundane. While blowing might have occasionally dislodged a piece of dust, the real fix was simply the act of taking the cartridge out and putting it back in. The connectors in early consoles, especially the Nintendo Entertainment System, could wear out over time. Reseating the cartridge was often all that was needed to establish a better connection. In fact, the moisture from your breath could actually lead to further corrosion on the pins over time, making the problem worse in the long run. But for millions of kids, the ritual was real, a moment of technical wizardry that brought their favorite digital worlds back to life. Chapter 62: The Secret Sonic Phone Number. In the early 90s, a tantalizing rumor spread through schoolyards about the original Sonic the Hedgehog. The story went that if you were skilled enough, you could perform a frame-perfect jump at the end of the game and land inside Dr. Robotnik's escaping spaceship. If you managed this incredible feat, you would be rewarded with a secret ending that displayed a phone number. Calling that number, the legend claimed, would connect you to Sega itself, who would reward your gaming prowess with a free Sega Genesis console. It was, of course, completely implausible, but that didn't stop countless children from playing the final level over and over again, hoping for that one-in-a-million shot at a free console and ultimate bragging rights. Chapter 63. Petting the Pig in Monster Hunter. Some myths are not about secret levels or hidden characters, but about small rituals that promise just a little bit of luck. In the Monster Hunter series, a long-standing superstition claims that if you pet the small pig that wanders around your farm before embarking on a quest, you will have a better chance of getting rare item drops from the monsters you hunt. There is no code in the game to support this. It is purely a superstition, but it's a harmless and charming one. For many players, petting the pig became a pre-hunt ritual, a small moment of peace before heading out into the dangerous wilderness. Whether it brought them luck or not, it was a tradition that brought the community together. Chapter 64. Resurrecting General Leo. One of the most tragic moments in Final Fantasy VI is the death of the Honorable General Leo. For years after the game's release, a persistent rumor claimed there was a secret way to bring him back to life. The methods described were often incredibly elaborate and convoluted, involving specific party compositions. Visiting certain locations in a precise order and fighting hundreds of battles on a single patch of land. For the most part, these were all false. However, years later, players discovered that through a complex sequence-breaking glitch involving dying and reloading a save without powering off the console, it was possible to gain access to the airship very early in the game. This allowed players to recruit a glitched version of General Leo who could be used in battle. It wasn't the true resurrection fans had dreamed of, but it was a fascinating case of a long-held myth being, in a strange way, proven possible. Chapter 65. The Pokemon Catching Trick. It was a belief held with near religious conviction on playgrounds across the world. When you threw a Pokeball in Pokemon Red and Blue, you could increase your chances of a successful capture by performing a secret button combination. The exact method varied from region to region. Some swore by rapidly tapping the A button. Others insisted you had to hold down the B button and the down arrow on the D-pad. Some even believed you had to close your eyes and turn the Game Boy upside down. None of these methods, of course, had any effect on the game's capture algorithm. But the belief was so widespread and the feeling of success when it worked so powerful that it has become one of the most universal and nostalgic memories of the first generation of Pokemon players. Chapter 66. Unlocking Sonic and Tails in Melee. The roster of Super Smash Bros. Melee was already massive for its time, but that didn't stop players from dreaming of more. One of the most persistent rumors of the GameCube era was that Sonic the Hedgehog and his sidekick, Tails, were secret, unlockable characters in the game. The logic seemed sound. Sega and Nintendo were no longer console rivals, and Sonic had already appeared in Nintendo games. The methods for unlocking them were, as always, absurdly difficult, often involving beating the game's hardest modes without losing a life, or collecting every trophy in the game. The rumor was, of course, false, but the desire to see Nintendo's mascot face off against his old rival was so strong that the myth endured for years, until Sonic finally made his official debut in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Part X: The Unseen Architects, Developer Stories and Intentional Mysteries. Not all mysteries are born from the imagination of players. Some are placed there by the game's creators, either as deliberate puzzles or as the unavoidable ghosts of a troubled development. These are the stories of the unseen architects, the developers whose personal experiences, hidden jokes, and unfinished work have become legends in their own right. Chapter 67: The Disappearance of the Dwarves. In the world of the Elder Scrolls III: Morrowind, the disappearance of the ancient and technologically advanced race of dwarves, or Dwemer, is one of the lore's greatest mysteries. In the game, an incompetent guildmaster gives you a side quest that is meant to be impossible: to find out what happened to them. It's a joke, a throwaway quest designed to show the guildmaster's foolishness. But this is Morrowind, a game famous for its lack of hand-holding. And in Morrowind, the impossible is sometimes just very, very difficult. The answer is out there, hidden in the world, with no quest markers or hints to guide you. You must find 3 specific random dwarven books located in 3 completely different random dungeons. Then, you must bring them to the last surviving dwarf in the world, who himself is hidden away and was on another plane of existence when his people vanished. If you manage to do all of this, he will translate the books and tell you the story of what happened. But the game never acknowledges your achievement. The quest never officially completes. Your discovery, one of the biggest in the world's history, goes completely unrecognized. It is a perfect, and perhaps unintentional, commentary on the nature of knowledge itself. Some secrets are found not for reward, but for their own sake. Chapter 68: The Secret Room in Arkham Asylum. Sometimes, a secret is hidden so well that no one can find it. Such was the case with Batman: Arkham Asylum. The developers at Rocksteady had hidden a secret room deep within the game, an office containing blueprints and concept art for the game's sequel, Arkham City. They were so proud of their secret that they waited for the community to discover it. And they waited, and waited. Months passed, and no one found it. The secret was so well hidden, behind a nondescript wall in an unremarkable office, that players simply never thought to look there. Eventually, Rocksteady had to give up and just tell everyone where it was. A rare case of a developer's clever Easter egg being a little too clever for its own good. Chapter 69: The Megalodon of Battlefield 4. For a long time, it was just a rumor. Players of Battlefield 4 whispered about a giant prehistoric shark, a megalodon, hidden in one of the game's multiplayer maps. The developers denied it, but the community persisted, convinced it was real. The hunt became a massive, collaborative effort. players discovered a series of incredibly obscure and complex steps that had to be performed by a full server of players. It involved waiting for a specific number of players to gather around a certain buoy in the water, and then all shooting it at the same time. For a long time, no one could get it to work. But the community kept trying, and eventually, they succeeded. A giant megalodon shark leaped out of the water, a spectacular reward for one of the most elaborate and community-driven Easter egg hunts in gaming history. Chapter 70. The Portal 2 ARG. In the lead-up to the release of Portal 2, the developers at Valve launched one of the most intricate alternate reality games, or ARGs, ever created. It began with a simple, unannounced update to the original Portal. The update added a radio to each test chamber. Players discovered that if they carried these radios to specific, hidden locations, the radios would stop playing music and instead emit a strange series of beeps and static. The community quickly realized this was a puzzle. The sounds were identified as slow scan television, or SSTV, an old method of transmitting images through sound waves. By running the audio through decoding software, players were able to reveal a series of cryptic images. Other radios played Morse code. When all of these clues were pieced together, they revealed a phone number. This number connected to an old-school bulletin board system, or BBS, which had to be dialed into using a 56K modem. On the BBS, players found more clues and images, all of which slowly revealed details about the upcoming sequel. It was a masterful ARG, a puzzle that spanned from the digital world of the game to the analog world of old modems, and it showcased the incredible dedication and collaborative power of the gaming community. Part 7. The glitches in the Matrix. When the code fights back. Games are complex machines built from millions of lines of code, and sometimes that code breaks in strange and unexpected ways. These are the glitches, the bugs, the moments when the carefully constructed reality of a digital world begins to unravel. Some are frustrating, some are hilarious, and some are so strange they become legends in their own right. Chapter 71. The Ghost of Lockout. In the early days of Halo 2 on Xbox Live, a strange legend emerged from the popular multiplayer map, Lockout. Players would tell stories of a ghost, a player model that would appear in a match, standing perfectly still, completely invincible. It wouldn't move or animate. Bullets and grenades would have no effect. It would simply stand there, watching, before vanishing without a trace. Videos of these encounters, often grainy and low quality, would circulate on forums. Was it a hacker? A developer's ghost? Or just a strange network glitch? The Ghost of Lockout became a beloved piece of Halo folklore, a digital phantom born from the unpredictable nature of early online gaming. Chapter 72. The Suicidal Pedestrians of San Andreas. The world of Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, was filled with strange myths, but some of them were actually true. Players exploring the game's vast countryside noticed a bizarre and unsettling phenomenon. Pedestrians would sometimes seem to deliberately walk into the path of their car, as if they were trying to get hit. This led to the myth of the suicidal pedestrians. While it wasn't an intentional feature, it was a real glitch in the game's AI pathfinding. The code that governed how non-player characters avoided obstacles was simply not perfect, and in the wide-open spaces of the countryside, it would sometimes fail in spectacular and morbid ways. This, along with other strange but real occurrences, lent a sense of plausibility to the game's more outlandish myths, like Bigfoot. Chapter 73: The Ghost Cars of San Andreas. Another famous myth from the woods of San Andreas was that of the ghost cars. Players would report seeing old, beat-up cars rolling down hills in the middle of the forest, with no one in the driver's seat. It was a deeply unsettling sight, and it fueled countless ghost stories. The truth, once again, was a simple glitch. The game was programmed to spawn these specific models of cars on the tops of certain hills. However, due to a bug, they would sometimes spawn without their parking brake engaged, causing them to roll silently down the hill, creating the illusion of a haunted driverless vehicle. Chapter 74: The Ghost of CJ's Mom. One of the most personal and creepy myths of San Andreas was the belief that you could hear the ghost of the protagonist CJ's deceased mother in the family home. Players would stand in the dark, empty house and report hearing faint, ethereal breathing sounds. It was a chilling detail that seemed to add a layer of supernatural horror to the game's story. The reality was far more simple. The breathing sound was actually CJ's own breathing. The game had a stealth mechanic where, in dark environments, you could hear CJ's breath to indicate that he was in stealth mode. The Johnson house was dark, and so the sound would play, leading players to believe they were hearing a ghost. Chapter 75: The Planes That Crash Into You. Perhaps the most spectacular and hilarious glitch in San Andreas was the one the developers knew about and decided to leave in because they thought it was funny. Occasionally, and completely at random, the game would spawn a passenger plane in the sky pointed directly at the player's location and on a collision course. This could happen anywhere, at any time. You could be walking down the street or driving in the desert, and suddenly, a 747 would fall out of the sky and crash into you. It was a rare, chaotic, and completely unpredictable event that became a legendary part of the San Andreas experience. Chapter 76: The Mad Dog Glitch. Not all glitches are harmless or funny. Some can break the game entirely. One of the most infamous game-breaking bugs in San Andreas was the Mad Dog glitch. In a crucial story mission, the player is supposed to save the rapper Mad Dog as he attempts to jump from a casino roof. However, for many players, a glitch would cause Mad Dog to simply walk off the roof and fall to his death before the mission could even properly begin, making it impossible to progress in the game. For years, the cause of this glitch was a mystery. It was eventually discovered that one of the main causes was using the pedestrian riot cheat code at any point in the game. The cheat would remain active in the game's memory, and when the Mad Dog mission loaded, the AI would be driven to fight the nearest person, causing him to walk off the roof. But even for players who never used cheats, the glitch would sometimes still occur, its true cause remaining one of the game's most frustrating unsolved mysteries. Part 12. A Cascade of Whispers. The history of gaming is a vast and endless landscape, filled with countless other whispers, other secrets, other ghosts in the machine. As we drift towards the end of our journey, let these final mysteries wash over you, a cascade of forgotten lore. We remember the unreachable power-ups in Blaster Master, hinting at a jumping ability that was never implemented. We remember the single inaccessible bar in Breath of Fire, with its own unique theme music, a place no player was ever meant to enter. We remember the invisible staircase in Castlevania II, leading to a strange, empty, and utterly pointless area of the game. We remember the unopenable treasure chests in games like Banjo-Kazooie, a constant, tantalizing mystery for completionists. We remember the myth of the Paladin Ring in Final Fantasy VI, a cursed item that players believed could be purified, but never could. We remember the theory that Emperor Gestal could be resurrected. We remember the search for the non-existent Dirty Socks relic on Triangle Island. We remember the rumor that you could make strong Zack Fair a playable party member in Final Fantasy VII. We remember the belief that you could melt the ice in Zora's throne room as an adult in Ocarina of Time. We remember the strange, silent figures watching from the cliffs in Spiritual Fantasy II, known in the game's files only as the Hell Valley Skytrees. Spiritual Fantasy II. We remember the mystery of what happened to the Chozo series, a question left unanswered for decades. We remember the unsettling, ambiguous ending of the game Inside, a supposed deep-web horror game filled with disturbing imagery and audio from real-world killer interviews. We remember the story of Strong Catastrophe Crow, a fictional lost Nintendo 64 game whose developer supposedly vanished at sea. We remember the Ermax Encountered message in Mortal Kombat 2, a glitch that was mistaken for a secret character, leading to the eventual creation of the ninja, Ermac. We remember the fetus from hell theory in Earthbound, the idea that the game's final abstract boss, Gigas, was a representation of a fetus, a theory later denied by the game's creator. We remember the Squall is Dead theory from Final Fantasy VIII, the belief that the game's hero dies at the end of the first disc, and the rest of the game is his dying dream. We remember the dark interpretation of Echo's ending, the theory that the girl you save is, in the end, possessed by the evil queen. Remember the story of Ica Village in Animal Crossing, a player-created town that tells a silent, environmental horror story of a girl and her doll. And so, our long night's journey comes to a close. We have walked through haunted forests and digital graveyards. We have sifted through the sands of a New Mexico landfill and listened to the whispers from a cursed cartridge. We have seen how a simple glitch can become a legend, and how a legend can become a real, playable world. These stories, whether they are fact or fiction, bug or feature, remind us that the worlds we play in are more than just code. They are places of shared experience, of community, of mystery, and of wonder. They are modern folklore, written not in old books, but in the glowing pixels of a screen. The ghosts in the machine are, in the end, our own. Our own fears, our own curiosity, our own desire to believe that there is always one more secret to find. Now the journey is over. The mysteries can rest. The screen fades to black, and it is time to sleep. Good night.